Welcome Libra to your year 2026 deep dive horoscope forecast. I'm going to share with you first of all some of the big themes for the year ahead. Then on screen I'll share the solar return right at the start of the year, which always provides an influential backdrop for the whole 12 months, and your ruler Venus is right at the heart of the action. I'm then going to thread it all together to give you a timeline of all the major events of this year and how they're going to play out for you, including a Venus retrograde in the autumn. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and help it to continue to thrive. So last year, Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, moved into a very powerful part of your chart, but was challenged straight away by the strict and restrictive energies of Saturn. So it may be that you didn't quite achieve the breakthrough you wanted when it came to goals and ambitions. In the first 6 months of this year, I feel there's a really strong opportunity for you to start to make progress. So that's really exciting. Also, as we come into this new year, we need to be mindful of the eclipse series, which is ongoing. And in September in 25, we had two. The first, a lunar eclipse, the second, a solar eclipse. That lunar eclipse occurred in the part of your chart to do with obligation and duty, hard work, application, but also to do with your physical well-being. And if you recall, the strict Saturn moved back into that area on the 1st of September. So as you come into this year, Saturn and the dreamy Neptune are still in house 6. So that's significant. But you also have the energy of those eclipses feeding in to not just Saturn and Neptune, but the North Node, which starts 2026 still in Pisces. And that's a reflection of the eclipses. So finding the midpoint between what you give, what you're prepared to be very dedicated around, what gives you personal satisfaction, where you take your responsibilities and duties seriously, but another part of your needs, which is much more spiritual, and a need to indulge at times in just giving yourself space, peace, tranquility, rest, healing. There's a little bit of a juggle, and that is going to continue throughout this year because we've got two more lunar eclipses going across the signs of Virgo and Pisces. However, we have got a new eclipse series beginning, and the first of these is in your sister air sign of Aquarius. That's on the 17th of February. It is as the Sun is reaching the end of its journey through Aquarius, and it does clash in a very turbulent way, potentially, with Uranus, the planet of disruption, which has, apart from the 5 months of last year, when it moved into the enterprise in 9th house for you, it has been in your 8th house. So close alliances and anything to do with long-term money have probably been quite unsettled. So as you come into this year, Uranus retains that location, but it is switching back into Gemini at the end of April on the 26th. But that solar eclipse suggests that if you are in a romantic situation, for example, where you feel a bit closed in, or someone's rather too possessive or controlling, that's something you're going to find very difficult to accept. And part of the energy of the eclipses is to not be too much of a giver. It is about knowing when to say no. And because your sign is very predicated on being very skilled at understanding what other people want, it becomes a very empty experience if it's too much give and not enough get. So in a way, that solar eclipse is very supportive. And of course, you've got Pluto in Aquarius at the start of the year still. It starts the year in the sign of Aquarius, but it is going to be very powerful, particularly when it links to the position of Uranus when it returns back to Gemini. So the end of April can be a time when some new exciting adventures, especially romantically, could start to show up for you. But then Neptune and Saturn are going to be moving back into your sector of relating. Neptune towards the end of January and Saturn mid-February, and they coalesce together, which is a very rare alliance, on the 18th of February. If you are in a relationship which you're not enjoying, the chances are Saturn particularly is encouraging you to peel away the illusion, Neptune, and be more realistic about what the prospects are to make this work or not. However, you do have the first of those lunar eclipses in the sign of Virgo, which occurs on the 3rd of March. Once again, you might be thinking about what you do for a living. If you work in a service orientated job, anything to do with distribution or food, health or care, it's possible that if you're feeling overloaded or overwhelmed, you're going to want to firm up those boundaries. But perhaps in a way, what Uranus is going to push you to do by the end of April is to be a bit more daring about breaking away from anything which doesn't really respect and recognize just how dedicated you can be. And because Jupiter is much freer as we go into this new year, much more able to elevate your talents and connect you to influential people, your hard work and dedication can be something that comes back to you. Now, we then have the move of Jupiter into the sign of Leo, and that too is going to connect to Uranus and back to Pluto. So that's intriguing because that energy can be electric. What Jupiter will do when it moves into the sign of Leo is make you very conscious of who you want to be with, the people you want to celebrate, the causes that give you inspiration. It's brilliant for friendship, and if you are a joiner, naturally the second half of this year could see you much more social. But also it could see you changing some of your long-term plans and philosophies, because on the 12th of August we're going to have the second new eclipse of the year in Leo. Now this one, also with Jupiter in residency, but also Mercury, really is pumping you up to showcase everything about you. You know, you're someone who understands fairness, balance, you have great taste, you understand trends, can be skillful at handling people, and Jupiter's going to give you a lot more confidence in terms of all sorts of connections. If you are quite a sociable person, as I mentioned, I think the second half of the year will be lively. If you're less so, you could be surprised by how much more enthusiastic you are about meeting up and forging new networks. But then we have the final eclipse of the year in the sign of Pisces, and that brings to a close the series between Virgo and Pisces, but it still provides a backdrop energy for the last half of 26. And essentially, again, it's all about managing and balancing physical and emotional. And you know, we live in a world where some people find the emotional sphere quite challenging and want to be very focused on facts and figures. Other people are much more comfortable with the spiritual and emotional dimension. So it depends what's going on within you. But if you can integrate those two polarities more successfully, your health will improve this year. Energetically, you will feel better. And part of the process is going to be about gaining greater confidence to say no. And Saturn being on your 7th house cusp, he advances to 14 degrees before slamming on the brakes, will certainly be key to that. Now, if you did meet someone new this year, particularly in the early part of the year, and it did feel really good, just know that Saturn's retrograde begins on July the 26th. It's always an annual 5-month event, and through to December the 10th, that could be a time when you do have to really work at it. But you know, even the best of relationships don't necessarily come handed to us on a gilded plate. Application is always important, particularly with Saturn in the mix. But I feel that Saturn in your 7th house can challenge you about all sorts of relationships. It can also challenge you about your relationship with yourself. How are you approaching your sense of self-worth? Saturn in Aries is not its best location. Aries is about new beginnings, and Saturn here is in its full. Saturn limits. Aries likes to go for it. But I still think you can make it work for you well, because of that part of you that can, when I've said this in the past, it has created much comment, there can be part of you that can be a little bit too attuned to the needs of others. But of course it depends on your unique nativity. But anyone who has Venus in the 7th house, the moon in the 7th house, very Libran type charts, can find that their identity can at times dissolve in terms of keeping everyone else buoyant. So very important to keep working, particularly with all the lessons of Pluto since 2008, protecting your emotional world. And if there are players around you, whether it's friends, colleagues, family members, who don't respect you as much as they should, they're going to be in for a little bit of a surprise this year, because you're going to be very unyielding, I feel. Now, I need to mention to you that the Mercury retrogrades this year are all in water signs. It starts with Pisces, then we have one in Cancer, then we have one in Scorpio. The significance is, the first of them occurs in a part of your situation which is to do with your obligations and responsibilities. So from February the 26th to March the 20th, if you are applying for a job, or you're needing to make sure that your work is being done in a very ordered way, that could be a time when things get bogged down, or a few oversights could occur. There could be those inevitable delays, but remember, Mercury retrograde is an opportunity to reset. So a Mercury retrograde in house 6, very Virgoan, but in a water sign, it's asking you as a logical air sign to stay in touch with your feelings. Then the next one is on June the 29th to July the 23rd in Cancer. Now that's your sector of success. That's 24 days. Now Jupiter at that point will have just left. So it is important, if you have achieved some kind of level of notability, helped your profile to gain greater recognition, that you don't take anything for granted through that particular retrograde. And then again, on October the 24th to November the 13th, the retrograde in Scorpio asks you to be very careful with everyday finances. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this, there is a retrograde for Venus. It begins in your second house of everyday money on October the 3rd, and it rewinds back to 22 degrees Libra on November the 14th. There may be something new that you're attempting at that part of the year that may need rethinking in some ways. If it is a relationship scenario, maybe someone that you're drawn to in a very sensual way initially turns out not to necessarily have the values that you thought they had. So again, the scales can fall from your eyes. So being attuned to the emotional dimension, very important with that Venus retrograde in Scorpio, the retrograde of Mercury in Scorpio, Cancer and Pisces. So however much you're thinking about practicalities, the Pisces Mercury retrograde, 6th house, details, the Mercury retrograde in Cancer, success and connection to influential people, your connection to the world, and the Scorpio one, everyday money, being attuned to the feeling as well as the logic, very, very important. Now I'm going to share with you now your solar return. But just before I go into that, I want to share with you about my unique offer. You can order your personal natal forecast for year 2026 now, and I'll give you the rest of this year free. But also you'll get 30% off the individual prices, and you'll get your life roadmap report in my special package. That really helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far. All of us, it's totally unique to each person, but understanding those patterns and matching them to the forecast will help you to make your moves in the new year much more shrewdly. But also in my special offer, you'll get your free general zodiac forecast for each of the 12 signs, but also your Chinese forecast, your Vedic forecast, and your love forecast too in my special booklets. Please see the link below for more. And the exciting thing I wanted to share with you was about Venus, because Venus in the sign of Capricorn can be a bit cautious, but it's very close to Mars, but either of them lay either side of the sun. The sun's always in Capricorn at this time of the year, and so as we come into the new year, just in the second decan of Capricorn, that's sub-ruled by your ruler Venus, but through its influence of the sign of Taurus. But what I feel that combination says, if you're wanting to move home this year, or you're wanting to renovate where you live, or redecorate, or get significant changes going with your furnishings, or you want to start a home-based business, or you want to start a family, that's a glorious set of influences. It also suggests that if there have been real strains around your family life since 2008, things could get onto a much better footing. I can't promise that there would be a reunion. What I would say is there may be new people coming into your world who have much more of an emotional compass, but it may be through your grandchildren, it could be through people that you're very close to in your extended family, but that's a lovely combination between those three. What we do need to be mindful of, however, is the position of Mercury, because Mercury is in Sagittarius for the third year running. It's just amazing, the synchronicity of astrology, because Mercury doesn't like being in the sign of Sagittarius. It's in its fall. Sagittarius is big and bold and can make at times the claims that somewhat can be exaggerated. Mercury's rulership of the sign of Virgo in particular is about precision, and its rulership of the sign of Gemini is about quick communications. Now, for you personally, the overlay of Mercury is in house 3, so it has a kind of Gemini feel. But that suggests that there will be opportunities to convey messages this year, which you have a great gift for. But look at the position of Neptune and Saturn. They're squaring up Mercury. Whatever you want to say this year, don't necessarily assume it will be heard in the way you mean. However skillful you are, however much you cut it into bite-sized pieces, however authoritative you are, however compelling and interesting your message is, someone may receive or scrutinize it in a way you don't want. So just be aware, particularly with the Sun at 10:34 in Capricorn and the Moon at 6:43 in Gemini, your sister air sign, the midpoint between the two, the shortest point between the two, which is the yin yang of the chart for all of us, sees a midpoint that's very, very close to Saturn. You can see the Sun and the Moon together. And that's in the 6th house, suggesting, along with the node initially, and of course also the two lunar eclipses going between Virgo and Pisces, and the ongoing eclipses that come into the new year, that you do need to still take care of the business side of things. Make sure that you're very pragmatic in your approach, very earthy. Your idealism could at times be challenged. If you accept that, because the solar return does provide a backdrop despite the fact that Saturn and Neptune are going to be moving, if you can accept that you do need to be very efficient, you need to be very ordered in your approach, that attention to detail will be as important as the brilliance of your ideas, then all well and good. Because with Jupiter up there in that 10th house, more broadly in a trine with Neptune, so the two rulers of Pisces are receptive to one another, and therefore Jupiter as the depositor, suggests if you put in the industry and the application, particularly Jupiter's linked to the midpoint, you could actually, despite Mercury's at times confusing and frustrating right angle, which may see you feel a bit stressed out at times, you could have a major breakthrough. But it is about not just the brilliance of your message, it's the efficiency in which you deliver it. So that's very important as you go into this new year. Some other takeouts in the solar return: Uranus. Uranus back in the sign of Taurus through to the 26th of April. That's in a quincunx with Mercury. Again, if you're discussing finances, particularly shared finances, and you're collaborating with someone, make sure you have firm guardrails in terms of who does and who will contribute what. It needs to be quite formal. I think your nervous energy at times may feel a little bit over aroused throughout the year. So just look after yourself. Make sure that you're doing what you can in terms of your healing, because that healing, I think, comes from giving yourself permission at times, however much you do have to be very careful and responsible this year, but at times just to do something that's completely for you. Now, whether that is through a spa day, a walk in nature, whether having some therapeutic treatments, whether it's going on holiday to somewhere that's incredibly peaceful, where you can just immerse yourself in great silences, that will help you to have the breaks, the interfaces between what could be an extremely busy and an extremely exciting year. But just to cap it all off for you, Libra, your gift as a relator is the stuff of astral law, but I think you found, particularly with Pluto making its way through Capricorn, that there were some big disappointments, maybe even some betrayals. Perhaps at times from people that you never thought would let you down, people in your family or your close inner circle, maybe around a relationship. Then over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of extra duress and responsibility at work, and that's not been easy, and there is a bit more of that to come this year. But the difference is you're going to get the reward this year if you can keep beavering away, but you must do the things that maintain your well-being. So that does mean being very careful about what you eat and drink, how much sleep you get, how much exercise, but also rest. They're all very important to nourish your body, but you need to nourish your soul. But when it comes to relationships, Saturn moving back into your 7th house, I think can be an asset to you. It's going to make you much more redoubtable. It's good to bend and flex. You know, if we want everything on our own terms, it's not actually something that makes for great relationships. And it's also good to sometimes hear where we could do better. But I think for you, because you are a giver generally, Saturn in your 7th house is really going to help you to firm up your boundaries, whether it is with the line manager, the neighbour, the friend who tends to take you for granted, the relative that always assumes that you're going to do the visiting to the older relative. And that firmness is going to be something that comes back to you. So it's an exciting year ahead, particularly with that wonderful set of influences in Leo, with Jupiter moving into the sign, then that solar eclipse. The second half of this year is going to be much more buoyant, exciting and fun. Jupiter doesn't slam on the brakes this year until December, which is very unusual. So that means that it's going to be a big chance for you to really push outwards. But in the first half of the year, just keep going, but make sure you get that balance between the physical and emotional side of your life well ordered. But some big changes around your emotional life or relationships in a positive way are really very much to the fore. Please join me at patrickarundell.com. You can always enjoy your free daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, general, love and Vedic horoscope forecast, my amazing free card tarot, if I say so myself, which is totally free, and also you can sign up for your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning. That's patrickarundell.com. All the best and goodbye.